is an assistant professor of applied linguistics. His research interests include motivation theory, research methodology, and complexity. And Dr. Al-Hoorie will be discussing peer reviewers evaluating the evaluators. All right, Dr. Ali, if you'd like to start.
So let's get started. So peer reviewers evaluating the evaluators. So the role of peer reviewers is to evaluate you when you submit your research. But is anybody evaluating their work when they do their job? Is their work properly done or not? And this is a very important question, because if it turns out that their work is not very good, this will have a lot of consequences to the published literature. What can we trust in the literature if the peer review is not, there are some problems with it? And so this is a very important question. It has a lot of consequences. Now, we can look at the credibility of reviewers, and we can look at the credibility of the published literature. That's a different question. I'm not going to talk about that question. We have done some research evaluating, for example, the statistical rigor of published literature, but evaluate reviewers, that's a different concept. They might be related to different things. Okay, so outline. We will first start with the purpose of peer review. Then, is it a valid tool? So the peer review is a tool to select what gets published and what doesn't get published. So we can think of it as a tool. It could be a good tool, it may not be a good tool. Then why or why not? Then why or why not? And whether there is empirical evidence. This is important because you may have your opinion, but we want to look at the evidence. And finally, are there any alternatives? So I tried to make the outline logical, and the steps follow logically. So starting with the purpose of peer review, there are two main functions generally agreed upon. First one is as a quality assurance, sometimes called gatekeeping or the epistemic filter. So this is for unintentional errors. If there are mistakes that the author made, you ask them to correct these mistakes, or detecting fraud, which is deliberate falsification. So finding mistakes, whether it's intentional or not. Then we have reviewer 2. So this is a new study published just this year, like a few months ago, about authors' psychological reactions to peer review. And I'm sure you would expect these results, that rejection invokes anger, sadness, and disagreement. Low quality reviews lead to anxiety, anger, and sadness, especially since you are waiting for a long time. So pretty much everybody who has experience with the publication process must have had experiences with reviewer 2. So generally speaking, people feel there is something wrong. Why are reviewers like this? What is going on? What is behind the scenes, let's say? Why is it like this? Is there a reason? Are they really doing a good job or not? So pretty much everybody agrees that something is not right with reviewers. But what is it, So let's look at it more closely here. The validity of reviewers. So somebody called Richard Smith wrote a paper called Peer Reviewers: Time for Mass Rebellion? ? Let's see what he's saying. I have long argued, based on evidence, that publication peer review is useless. This is a very strong adjective to use in this context. Useless, you can say it's problematic, but useless completely? Now remember this, we'll come back to it later. Is it truly useless or not? Okay. There is almost no evidence of the effectiveness of peer review, but substantial evidence that it is slow, expensive, poor at detecting errors. Remember the previous slide, I said that detecting errors, it's poor at detecting errors. Largely a lottery. So it's luck, if you are lucky, you get easygoing reviewers. If you are not lucky, you get strict reviewers. So there's a lot of chance involved in it. And anybody who has published in journals has experienced this. There's a lot of chance element in who gets to review your paper. Prone to bias and abuse, unable to guard against fraud. So even fraud, not only errors, even fraud, it's unable to guard against it because you are just reading the report, the paper. You don't know what happened before that. And anti-innovatory in that it tends to reject truly original research. And this is true also. A lot of research that's now we consider groundbreaking, a lot of it was originally rejected by reviewers because it is innovatory. So if you follow the mainstream, then you have a better chance of publishing. So is this really a good tool? If it was a drug, this saying goes, it would never be approved. So, you see the language is strong. Who is this Richard Smith? Why is he in February 2021 saying this? Based on what? Now, Richard Smith was the editor of BMJ, the British Medical Journal, which has an impact factor of almost 40. That's a crazy impact factor. People, if they publish in a journal with an impact factor of 0.1, they will be happy and celebrate. This is a journal with an impact factor of 40. So this person has a lot of experience. He's not talking, without experience. So why is this happening? So this is another paper talking about how reviewers are selected. Those reviewers are selected based on ad hoc decision-making by the editor. This is a big problem, right? Ad hoc is luck. As I said, it's luck, it's a lottery. Relevance to content area, known to be reliable or high-quality reviewers, or people she has not asked recently. Even this is a factor because they are not employees working under the editor. It's like, doing unpaid job. Potential reviewers accept or decline invitations based on their interest in the article, indebtedness to the editor, and availability. Even indebtedness is involved in the process. And we call this a systematic process. There are problems here. Okay, let's look at the empirical evidence. I will start with this paper, then we will see other things. So this paper by Peters and Sessi, this is the title, Peer Review Practices of Psychological Journals, the Fate of Published Articles Submitted Again. So in this paper, what the authors did, they said, okay, let's take a group of published papers and send them again, different journals, to journals in the field, and see whether they will get published again or not. And then this will be a test of the reliability of peer reviewers. But it's tricky. How can you do this? How can you design an experiment like this? So let's look at the design. So they selected 13 articles from top psychology journals and the authors from prestigious institutions like Harvard and Stanford. They replaced the author names with fake names and the institution names with fake but low status sounding institutions like Tri-Valley Center for Human Potential. This is a fake institution. If you read the name, you can't compare to Stanford or Harvard. What's this Tri-Valley Center? What's the center? There is a clear difference in prestige in the name. So they submitted these articles, these 13 articles, the same journals within a year of the publication of the original paper. So they argued that if the peer review is valid, this article should be accepted again, especially since they sent the final version. The final version is the best version of that article because these authors, the original authors, when they submitted their papers, they received feedback and they improved their papers, and then the paper was accepted. So they are submitting the best papers. Now, what should we expect the outcome to be? Now, This is how science works. You have hypotheses. The hypothesis is that this paper should be accepted. Why did you form this hypothesis? Because your theory is that peer review is a valid system. And so this is the hypothesis. If, say, some papers received a major revision, then we start to revise this theory. If one paper gets rejected, for example, then you start to revise your theory more. But let's look at the result. So yeah, 10 articles were not detected by the editors because the change of the names and the other things. 3 of them were rejected and returned. So 10 were not detected and sent out for peer review. So let's see what happened. 9 were recommended for rejection resoundingly by both reviewers. Both reviewers agreed that this paper should be rejected. Just incredible. What type of luck is involved in this process now? And they didn't even ask for revision or just reject. You know, these are poor papers, and mostly the reasons were for statistical and design grounds. They have even reasons, you know, this is bad papers. So the authors concluded that these findings were a convincing demonstration of the unreliability of peer review. So just to continue what happened afterwards in this story. So what's the reaction? So some editors were very upset by this study because they felt that they were being tricked by the authors. So some of them even threatened with a lawsuit. People questioned the professional ethics of the authors. Even the department chairman at their own university started threatening them and withdrew all departmental resources from them. So again, the authors concluded that obviously the journal review system has become a sacred cow. You cannot criticize this, because once you criticize this, you open Pandora's box. Who wants to open that box? Just leave it closed, because we will have a lot of problems if these things turns out, you know, true. So again, the authors, you know, they needed to publish their research. So they needed a couple of years and 2 unsuccessful attempts to publish their papers, and personally insulting ad hominem reviews. Finally, they were able to publish it, and then they received letters of support, over 1,000. You can imagine when you publish a paper and suddenly you receive 1,000 letters of support, every one of them was complimentary. There's some people who are feeling that something was not right. Okay, so somebody might say, okay, this is one study. Maybe, you know, if you do this study, if you replicate it, you might find different results. So there's something called the Interrelated reliability, and this is very common. You need to do it in your research. So some people applied this to reviewers. Do reviewers agree or not? Because if they are valid, then they should agree. You know, it's Interrelated reliability. So in medical journals, we would expect, if you do this reliability test, have a reliability of 0.9. It's a very good reliability. Maybe 0.8, maybe 0.7. That's, you know, the minimum we can accept. Remember, this is a high stakes thing. This is what gets published, what doesn't get published. We have to have high standards here. Surprise was the reliability was 0.1. What is 0.1? You remember when Richard Smith previously said the peer review was useless. If you have reliability of 0.1, what type of instrument is this? It's pretty much zero. Whether you have it or you don't have it, you know, it's just nothing. Some people did more research, and then there was a meta-analysis of interrelated reliability with reviewers. And again, it was 0.7, 0.17. It's very low. So as one researcher did, if researchers wrote up the peer review process as a measure, submitted it for a journal for publication, it would get rejected because of it and unreliable. So if you follow this process that the journals follow in your own paper, you say, you know, I you know, asked my friends based on, you know, availability and indebtedness and people that I have not asked previously, and, you know, some people agreed, some people rejected, and, you know, these are the people I could find to do my analysis based on. And will get rejected. What type of reliability do you have here? But the journals, this is what the journals do. So let me ask a few innocent questions now. Do peer reviewers receive any training? You would think that people who do the review will go through some courses and will be certified before they can be reviewers. But in reality, you just publish one paper and suddenly you become a reviewer. Do they receive any payment? Answer is no. You just do it for free. If somebody is doing something for free, are they going to take it seriously? Do they have time? If you are also busy, you have your own research, your own teaching, your own supervision, your own personal life, you don't get paid, you don't have the time for it, what type of quality are you expect? Is there a systematic way of choosing reviewers? Maybe if you have a systematic way, you can overcome these challenges. No systematic way. Is there a valid tool that reviewers use? No, it's subjective judgment. They read it and they give their opinion. So there are a lot of problems with this process. So it's not only poor process, but it's also exploitative. This is a recent paper published like 2 weeks ago or something. $1 billion donation, notice donation, this is a very important word, estimating the cost of researchers' time spent on peer review. So these researchers estimated that in 2020 alone, over 100 million hours of peer review was spent. And if they were to pay reviewers, it would have been $1.5 billion in America alone. Imagine if you calculate the amount of money. And why is it called donation? Because most publishers are for profit. It's a business. And we are doing the work for free for them. So what type of quality do you expect here? So alternatives. Let's see, how can we fix this? Is there any way that we can fix it? One solution is outsourcing the peer review process. Outsourcing means somebody else does the peer review, not the journal itself, which is a revolutionary idea. So you are saying that the journal should not do the review? Who does the review then? What's the function of the journal? That's a very new concept. So the journal does not do the review? So who is the one doing the review? So this is PCI-RR. It stands for peer community. So this peer review here, peer community and registered report. So basically, this is not a journal. So I want to make it clear. This is not a journal. This website provides a free service for researchers. After you finish from this service with them, you take the outcome and then you go to the journal. Okay, let's see the process. First, you submit a proposal of your study, and then your proposal gets reviewed at that website by peers. They give you feedback. You haven't done the study. Then they give you, in principle, acceptance of your proposal. Okay. Maybe they say there is something wrong in your design, in your sample size, in your instrument, or in whatever. Then you conduct your study while adhering to that proposal, and then you submit the full paper to that service again, PCI-RR. And tell them, look, you accepted my original proposal, and this is my manuscript adhering to that proposal. And then they do stage 2 review to make sure that you adhere to that proposal. Then they give you an acceptance, and then you can take your paper with the acceptance, a PCI-RR friendly journal, and they will accept it without further review. This is the revolutionary part. Imagine journals accepting your paper without doing their own review because your paper has been accepted elsewhere. So this is a diagram. You stage 1 review, and then you conduct your study, and then you get the second round of review, and then you submit it to the journal. So what are the benefits of this process? First, you get feedback before you conduct your study, before it's too late. If you discover by one reviewer that your design was problematic, then it's too late to fix it. It emphasizes design and de-emphasizes outcome, and this is very important. Now, people focus on outcome. Did I get a significant result or not? If no significant result, I can't publish. But it's not your fault that your results were not significant. The focus should be on the design. Did you do a proper design for an interesting question or not? It's not your problem that your results were non-significant. And if you focus on significance and other outcomes, you introduce biases. People will start looking for these outcomes. So this avoids this problem. Lowers the pressure on researchers, obviously. So the reviewers here are not looking to reject your paper. You don't have a paper, you just have a proposal. So the reviewers want to help you. Then don't do this, do that, or else you will have a problem later on. So it's their interest to help you improve your proposal. Everything is public, so you can credit reviewers. Yeah, so these are the benefits of this idea. This idea is kind of revolutionary and it's becoming more and more important recently. There's another solution, more revolutionary solution, more controversial solution also. Abolish the peer review completely, just no peer review. So this is even more revolutionary, obviously, than the previous one. So how, if you have no peer review, what do you mean? You just write your first draft and you publish it? Yes, that's basically it. So there's a website called PubPeer. It's for post-publication peer review. It's not peer review before you publish, after you publish. You can go on this website and you can do your review. Any paper you want in the world here. You can do it anonymously also. So what is the process? Let's look at the process. You submit your manuscript to a preprint repository. There are many repositories available for free. This counts as publication, period. Your first draft is a publication. This is very strange to many people. Review occurs afterwards. And then if you discover a mistake because of the reviewers, you can update your manuscript. Now, if you publish your paper and then you discover a mistake that the reviewers did not discover, it's very hard to update your paper. It's published. Are you going to send the journal a correction? You know, not many people want to do that. You're going to retract your paper? Obviously, not many people want to do that. There is no clear way and convenient way to fix problems after it's published. Here, it allows you to update your manuscript. Other benefits: accelerates the dissemination of information. Usually, in order for your paper to get published, you need like 2 years, a year and a half. You do a study, you wait for reviews, you get rejected, and you go to another journal, you wait for reviews, and maybe get rejected, maybe accepted, and it goes to production and wait for the proofs, and before it's published, and when it becomes part of an issue, it can easily take 2 years. So for 2 years, the community doesn't know about your findings. Why is this delay? So this avoids this problem. You know, the literature becomes immediately available to the public. It separates publication from evaluation. This is very important. So now currently in this system, publication and evaluation are lumped together. If you publish, it means your paper is good. If you don't publish, it means your paper is bad. So what people want to do is that they want to get published. That's the goal, is to pass peer review. That's the goal. If your reviewers want you to do that, then you do that because you want to get published. If other reviewers ask you to do a contradictory thing, the opposite of what the other reviewers in the other journal, then you will do that thing also because you want to publish. So the incentive is to get published. If we separate publication from evaluation, incentive becomes impact. Because publication is easy. You just write something in a Word document and publish it. But is the field going to take notice of this? Is it going to have an impact? So the attention of authors now will think, if I write this manuscript, who is going to care? Now the mentality changes. So we have a paper, we discuss other things, the reference is at the end. So
we have a few more minutes left.
Okay.
About 3 more minutes, okay?
I would try, I may need a bit more. So post-publication peer review, there are problems, people who advocate this revolutionary, controversial idea admit that there are problems. One problem is the Matthew effect, where the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. that famous scholars will receive the most attention. Another problem is, okay, if researchers within the field may presumably be able to evaluate the impact, what about journalists, what about the public? So there are problems, and this recent paper proposes some solutions to our advocates of this process. So at the end, quickly, I would like to mention quickly some further reading, important further reading. This is an important paper published just this year. Review as an evolving response to organizational constraint, evidence from sociology journals from 52 to 18, over 70 years. And this is a very important paper. If there is one paper you want to read, understand what's going on in the peer review, I would recommend this paper. So the conclusion of this paper is the ongoing evolution of the review model has not been driven by intellectual considerations. Rather, the evolution of review is best understood as the product of continuous effort to steward editor's scarce attention. So this paper traces back the history and the evolution of peer review, and surprisingly, at the beginning, the peer review was very different 70 years than it is today. In the past, there was no revise and resubmit, for example. It was either reject or accept. In the past, you were allowed to submit to multiple journals. You know, it's your paper, it's your right. How can we stop you? In the past, you didn't get feedback if your paper is rejected. The editor said, oh, we don't want to hurt people's attention, egos, and bruise their egos. So it's many interesting findings in this paper, how the evolution university with tens of thousands of students, you are required to have some bylaws and regulations to organize things because you have a large number of students, while the neighboring small institution may not need these regulations. And these regulations are not driven by intellectual considerations, it's just constraints. So they are not sacred, not a sacred cow. You can reconsider them 10 years later, 15 years later, if you need to. This is a paper about scientific peer review. Also, this discusses the reliability and other things. Is peer review a good idea? Publication peer review should be abolished. These people, you know, do not play around. Just, you know, don't beat about the bush. It should be abolished. And they mention their reasons. These are philosophy from the philosophy of science. Publishing as prostitution, another paper. This is an interesting paper where the author argued that, you know, it's from economic theory, acting against one's conventions in order to get a reward. So this is a serious paper from economics theory. These concepts are discussed there, and academics sell their soul, conform to the will of others, the referees, the editors, in order to gain one advantage, namely publication. So the solution was, my proposal is that the editor makes an initial decision whether a paper is worth publishing or not. The referees only ask to give suggestions on how to improve the paper. And finally, this is a recent paper that we wrote. It's available on ResearchGate. It's still in press if you want to read it. Finally, just like Forrest Gump's mother once told him, life is like a box of chocolate. You never know who the next reviewer will be to your paper. So for the time being, we have to deal with reviewers, references, and thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ali. That was really interesting. It's, there are a bunch of controversial suggestions there. And if anybody would like to ask any questions, please feel free to email Dr. Ali. His contact information is on the screen. I've also copy pasted his email in the chat box for you guys. Thank you very much, Dr. Ali.